The forgotten line on the map. The great council chamber of the galaxy was filled with endless light, carved from crystal that had seen millions of years. Leaders of dozens of species sat in silence, their eyes fixed on a single glowing map that floated in the air above them. The map stretched wide, showing every cluster of stars, every empire, every trade route. But there was one part that always made the room grow colder on the far edge, near the spiral arm where the stars looked faint and distant. The map stopped. It did not fade into unknown space as usual. It simply ended, a hard border, a sharp line drawn by invisible hands. No markings, no explanation, no beacon, just a silent wall, and every delegate in that chamber knew what lay beyond it, human territory. The word was never spoken out loud, even. The bravest traders or explorers avoided it. The records of the galaxy said little, only fragments. Ships that tried to cross never returned. Scouts that went near came back with eyes wide and trembling hands, refusing to say what they saw. In the council chamber, an elder creature with silver scales broke the silence, his voice low. "Why does the map still end here? Why is it never updated?" The others shifted. Some growled, some hissed, some simply lowered their gaze. Everyone knew the question, but no one dared answer. Far away from the chamber, in a small mining colony near the edge, a young worker named Dan sat outside the barracks, staring at the dark sky. He had never seen humans, never spoken to one, but he had heard the stories whispered in the mines. They said humans were shadows that walked like flesh, warriors that smiled at fear, builders who carved machines that outlasted stars. Dan's friend, an older miner named Ray, sat beside him. "You look at that border again," Ray said softly. "You better stop before someone reports you." "I don't understand," Dan whispered. "Every other part of the galaxy is mapped, but here, nothing." "How can nothing be so frightening?" Ray shook his head. "It is not nothing, boy. It is something too big to write on a map. Something too strong to be explained. I saw one once. A human ship, old, black, silent. It was bigger than our colony, and yet it moved like it weighed nothing. They did not attack. They did not speak. They just passed. But the space around them, it felt alive, like the universe itself bent for them." Dan's heart raced. He wanted to ask more, but the older miner stood and left, leaving him in silence. Back in the council chamber, the debate grew heated. One young diplomat pounded the table. "We cannot ignore it forever. Trade lanes are shrinking. We need to know what lies beyond. Perhaps humans are weak now. Perhaps they are gone." The room froze at his words. Gone. The idea was dangerous. Even to speak it was like spitting into fire. The elder with silver scales hissed sharply, "Do not say that again. Do not even think it. You think strength fades with time, but humans are not like us. They are something else." The chamber dimmed, as if the stars themselves listened. On the mining colony, Dan climbed a ridge that overlooked the void. From here, the stars seemed to stop. The great emptiness stretched before him. He felt his skin prickle, as if unseen eyes watched from across the dark. He whispered to himself, "Why does the map end here? What is waiting beyond?" And as if in answer, a faint shimmer appeared at the edge of the void. Far away but unmistakable. A shadow moved, a shape of impossible size gliding without sound. The stars around it vanished as if swallowed. Dan's breath caught. He had seen the border all his life, but tonight, for the first time, he felt it move. The void was not empty. It was awake. And somewhere deep in the silent dark, humanity watched. Whispers in the dark, the shimmer at the edge. Of the void haunted Dan's mind, even after it faded. He could not sleep. His heart kept pounding as if the shadow still lingered above him. He told no one, not even Ray, because he knew what would happen if anyone heard. They would silence him. They would say he was sick. They would send him away. But deep inside, Dan knew he had seen something real, something that did not belong. To myths, the next morning the colony was buzzing with fear, not about humans, but about pirates. A convoy of ore had been taken the night before. The attackers left no survivors, only floating wreckage. The overseer shouted orders. Guards patrolled the streets, but Dan kept silent. He knew the shimmer he saw had nothing to do with pirates. It was something else. In the Galaxy Council chamber, the argument had grown into a storm. More and more young voices demanded to push the border, to send fleets and scouts. "We cannot live with fear forever," one cried. "If they are still strong, then we should know. If they are gone, then the galaxy must expand." But the elders shook their heads, their voices trembling. "Do not call them gone. Do not call them weak. If you cross that border, you do not bring answers. You bring endings." The young diplomat who had spoken before rose again, his eyes hard. "Then I will take the risk. My fleet will cross. If the council is too afraid, I am not." The chamber broke into chaos. Some shouted for him to be silenced. Others whispered that maybe he was right. On the mining colony, Dan sat outside after his shift, staring at the stars. He felt the same pull as that young diplomat, the need to know, the hunger for truth. He remembered the shimmer, the massive shadow moving across the void. Suddenly Ray appeared beside him, his face pale. "Boy, listen to me. Something is coming." "What do you mean?" Dan asked. Ray's eyes darted to the dark sky. "Last night you saw it, didn't you?" Dan froze. "How do you know?" "Because I felt it too," Ray whispered. "You think only you watch the border, but many of us do. The miners, the traders. We all feel the weight of their eyes, but only some dare to look. Last night the border stirred, and when it stirs, change follows." Dan swallowed hard. "What kind of change?" Ray leaned close, his voice shaking. "When humans move, empires fall." As if to prove his words, alarms blared across the colony. Ships were approaching. The guards scrambled. The overseer shouted through speakers, "Pirates incoming! All workers to shelters!" Dan ran with the others, but deep in his chest, he felt it. This was no pirate raid, out in orbit. The attackers' ships swarmed like wolves, firing into the colony's defenses. Explosions ripped through the sky. The miners huddled underground, trembling. But then the void shifted. Every sound, every blast, every scream seemed to stop for a heartbeat. And then a shadow appeared above the battlefield, a shape too large, too silent. It slid into view like a mountain moving through water. Its surface dark, smooth, almost ancient, yet alive with faint lines of light. The pirate fleet froze, weapons falling silent. They knew what they were seeing, even if they had never seen it before. A human ship. The colony shook as the great vessel passed overhead. It did not fire, it did not send words. It only existed, and that was enough. One pirate captain screamed orders to run, but it was too late. The human ship shifted, and the space around it rippled. A blast of silent energy spread out. Not fire, not plasma, something deeper. The pirate ships shattered like glass, silent explosions blooming in the dark. The miners underground felt the rumble. The guards on the surface fell to their knees. Dan stared through a crack in the ceiling, his mouth dry, his heart hammering. The great shadow did not stay. Once the pirates were gone, it turned slowly and vanished back toward the border, leaving only silence behind when the alarms ended. No one spoke. No one dared. Dan whispered the words that no one else could. "They are not gone." Ray closed his eyes. "No, boy, they never were. And now the galaxy will remember." The silence after thunder. The colony lay in ruins. Smoke rose from shattered buildings. But it was not the pirates who had left the deepest mark. It was the silence. The crushing silence that followed the human ship's passing. No one celebrated the pirates' defeat. No songs, no shouts, only fear. The workers moved like ghosts, whispering to one another. Afraid the very air would carry their voices to the shadows, Dan could not sleep. He sat outside the barracks, staring at the stars, replaying what he had seen. The dark ship sliding across the void, the pirate fleet breaking apart like toys. It had been both terrible and beautiful. Ray joined him quietly, his face tired. "Now you understand why we never speak of them," he said. "It is not only fear, it is respect. When you see them once, you know words are too small." Dan nodded. "But why help us? Why save the colony if they did not care?" Ray looked away. "Boy, they do not help us. They do not save us. They simply act, and sometimes we are too small to know the reason." In the council chamber, news of the event spread faster than light, broken pirate ships drifting near. The human border, survivors whispering about a shadow larger than their fleet. Every delegate trembled as reports arrived. The young diplomat who had demanded exploration now stood pale and shaken. "So they are still there," he muttered, "still watching." The elder with silver scales slammed his claw against the table. "Fool, did you think they would fade? Humans do not fade, they wait. And when they move, the galaxy bends, panic spread. Some demanded that borders be reinforced, others demanded that fleets be prepared, but no one dared to suggest crossing again. Yet in hidden corners of the chamber, whispers grew. If they can destroy pirates so easily, what else can they do? Why do they hide? Why do they never speak? On the colony, the overseer gave strict orders. No one will report this event. No records, no messages, nothing leaves this world. But already the miners had seen too much. The fear had burned into their hearts. Dan wandered to the ridge again, the same place where he had first seen the shimmer. He felt as if the border itself breathed, alive and awake. A voice startled him. "You keep looking where you should not." It was a guard, one of the overseers, men, his eyes hard. "Stop asking questions, boy. Stop staring at the dark or you will vanish like the others." Dan stiffened. "Others?" The guard's face darkened. "Many have seen too much. Many have asked too much, and they are gone now. Some say they ran, some say they were taken. I do not care which, but I will not see another fool added to." "The list. Go home." Dan returned to his barracks, but his mind burned hotter. He knew he could not stop. That night, he dreamed of the human ship, its surface rippling like water, a voice he could not hear whispering through the silence. When he woke, he felt no fear, only a strange pull, like the stars themselves were calling. Meanwhile, in the council chamber, a desperate plan began to form. "If humans are awake," one delegate whispered, "then perhaps we should remind them that we exist before they remind us," the elder hissed in fury. "You want to wake the storm. You want to knock on a door that should never be opened." But the younger voices pressed harder. "What if they are preparing? What if they move again? What if next time it is not pirates they destroy, but us?" The chamber fell into shadow. No answer, no decision, only fear. Back on the colony, Dan found Ray waiting for him by the ridge, the old miner's hands shaking. "Boy, I must tell you something. Long ago, before you were born, I worked on a convoy near this border. We saw them then, too. Not ships, but something else. Something bigger. Whole constellations shifting as if they were alive. We swore never to speak. But now they stir again." Dan's voice trembled. "What do they want?" Ray's eyes glistened. "Not war, not peace. Something deeper. They remind the galaxy that maps end for a reason." The wind howled across the barren ground, and far in the distance, the border shimmered again. Faint but undeniable, Dan whispered, "They are moving." Ray closed his eyes. "And the galaxy will soon learn why no one asks." When borders breathe, the days after the shadow ship's passing were filled with unease. The colony worked as if nothing had happened, but every eye carried the memory. Every silence was heavy. Even the overseer walked with stiff steps, as though afraid the sky itself listened. Dan kept returning to the ridge, his heart restless. The shimmer had become stronger. Sometimes he thought he saw faint shapes drifting in the void, lines of light too vast to belong to ships, more like scars in the stars themselves. Ray warned him. "Stop going there, boy. You stare too long and they will notice you." Dan shook his head. "They already noticed us. They destroyed the pirates. They could have destroyed us too, but they didn't. Doesn't that mean something?" Ray's face darkened. "You are too young to understand. Not destroying us doesn't mean kindness. It only means we are not worth the effort yet." In the council chamber, fear grew sharper. Reports arrived from other border colonies. Faint disturbances, shadows too large for any known ship, miners and traders vanishing, entire convoys silent. The young diplomat's voice shook as he demanded action. "We must know. If humans are preparing to move, we must be ready." "But," the elder with silver scales roared back, "Ready! You speak of ready as if it is possible. No fleet, no weapon, no alliance can be ready for them. Humans do not fight as we do. They fight as if war is a breath, as if survival is their birthright." The chamber split. Some leaders demanded peace offerings, gifts, attempts to speak. Others whispered of preemptive strikes, though their eyes betrayed their terror. No one wanted to fire the first shot. Back on the colony, Dan's dreams grew heavier. He saw not just ships, but faces. Human faces. Silent, watching, their eyes full of storms. When he woke, the feeling never faded, as if those eyes followed him into the waking world. One night, he climbed the ridge again and saw something different. A light, not faint, but bright. A beacon flashing from the border, slow and deliberate. It was no random shimmer. It was a signal. Dan's heart raced. He scrambled back down and found Ray. "They are speaking to us," he whispered. "They are sending a signal." Ray shook his head violently. "You do not know that. You cannot know. Maybe it is a warning. Maybe it is a trap, boy. Stay away." But Dan could not. The pull was too strong. He began watching the beacon each night, tracing the flashes, trying to see a pattern. It was as if the border itself spoke in a language beyond words. In the council chamber, the young diplomat received secret reports of the beacon. His eyes burned with greed. If they are signaling, then it means they are willing to talk, maybe to trade, maybe to share power, the elder snarled. "Fool, they do not share. They remind, that is all. They remind the galaxy of its limits." The diplomat ignored him, whispering to allies, preparing. A fleet in secret, a plan to cross the border not with scouts, but with warships. He told himself it was strength, but in truth, it was desperation. Back on the colony, Dan finally dared to whisper what he feared most. "Ray, what if the signal is not for the council, not for the fleets? What if it is for us?" Ray's breath caught. His old eyes glistened. "Boy, do not say that. If they choose you, your life will not be your own." But Dan already knew. The beacon's rhythm pulsed in his chest, a call he could not ignore. That night, the ground trembled. Alarms blared again. But it was no pirate raid this time. The sky above the colony tore open with light, vast shadows moving beyond the stars, ships too large for imagination sliding into view. The overseer screamed through the speakers. "To shelters now!" "This is not a drill!" The miners ran. The guards fired weapons at the empty sky, but Dan did not move. He stood on the ridge, the beacon burning brighter, the void alive. Ray rushed to him, shouting, "Boy, you will die!" But then he stopped, his mouth falling open, for above them in the silence, a single shape descended. Not massive like the others, but smaller, closer, a vessel drifting down, black and silent, and from its hull, a light reached out. Not to the colony, not to the council, but to Dan. The map's border had moved, not outward, but inward, and humanity had chosen. The line that holds the stars. The smaller human vessel hovered above the ridge, its black hull absorbing the starlight. The beacon of light that reached out toward Dan pulsed like a heartbeat. The colony below fell into panic, but up here, the world felt still. Dan's chest throbbed with the rhythm. He did not move. He did not speak. Yet he felt as if the light was inside him, carrying questions too vast for words. Ray pulled at his arm, his voice shaking. "Boy, we must go, we must—" Hide, but Dan could not move. "They are not here for the colony," he whispered. "They are here for me." Down below, the Overseer's guards fired wildly into the sky. Their weapons left no mark on the silent ship. Every blast was swallowed by the dark. Then the vessel shifted, not attacking, not retaliating, only turning as if it did not even see them, its attention fixed only on Dan. Across the galaxy, the Council received frantic transmissions, images of the vessel, the beacon, the colony in chaos. The young diplomat shouted in triumph. "This is the moment, we must answer, we must meet them." But the elder with silver scales trembled with rage. "Fools, can you not see? They do not call for you, they do not call for fleets or councils, they call for one boy, one minor, and that means more than your armies ever could." Silence fell because they all knew the truth. Humans did not measure power as others did. They did not need councils or fleets. Their choices were never random. On the ridge, the light thickened, wrapping Dan in a glow. He felt no heat, no pain, only weight, as if 1,000 voices pressed against his mind. Not speaking, but showing, he saw battles long ago, stars breaking under human weapons, whole empires crumbling, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. He saw machines that moved planets, ships that drank suns, and yet always humanity stood apart, silent, watching, never conquering without reason, never expanding without cause. The voice inside him was not a word, but a certainty. "The map ends here because beyond us, you should not go." Dan gasped, his knees trembling. He whispered aloud, "Why me?" And the answer came, not with sound, but with feeling. "Because you asked." Tears filled his eyes. He remembered every night staring at the border, every question he whispered to the stars. He had asked, and humanity had answered. Ray knelt beside him, his old hands trembling. "Boy, what did they say?" Dan's voice shook. "The map ends here, because it must. They are not gone. They are not weak. They are holding the line. Something waits beyond, something even they fear." The elder in the council chamber felt it too. Though no signal had reached him, he whispered to himself, "Yes, that is why. They do not guard us from themselves. They guard us from what lies further." Above the ridge, the vessel began to fade, the light pulling back, the beacon dimming. But before it vanished, a final pulse filled the sky, brighter than any star, and every ship, every station, every world across the galaxy felt it. Not as sight, not as sound, but as weight in the soul, the unspoken warning, the reason no one asked. Then the vessel was gone. The void silent once more. Dan collapsed to the ground, gasping, but his eyes glowed with certainty. "Ray, I understand now. Humans are not the end of the map because they wish it so. They are the end of the map because they stand between us and the dark." Ray closed his eyes, whispering, "And every species knows better than to ask." The colony returned to uneasy silence. The council chamber fell into fearful stillness, and across the galaxy, maps remained unchanged, the border firm, unspoken, eternal, for humanity had reminded them once again that some questions should never be asked, and that the map of the galaxy ends at human territory, because beyond that line, even the stars fear to shine.